Welcome back, everybody. Nice to have you along. We carry on talking club rugby. Well, of course, as you know, there has been recent announcements of, of course, as you know, the president announced over the weekend that we're going down to level 2. But a few weeks ago, Western Province Rugby, SA Rugby announced the fact that clubs are allowed to have friendlies, allowed to have fixtures. Of course, at Western Province, some clubs have decided to have some friendly fixtures. We're going to talk about that in a second. But of course, also over the last couple of weeks, a lot of activity at Western Province Rugby in terms of the growth of women's rugby. The under-20s are doing really well. And of course, there are some festivals on the cards for women's rugby. Not to mention the fact that last week Western Province went out and handed out the books to celebrate World Literacy Day. As you know, we spoke to Chuma Kwalela from United Way in the beginning of the show. But joining me more now, to tell me more at least, is Faizel Felton, Western Province Rugby. Faizel, welcome back.
Good evening, JP, and good evening, listeners. Always good to be back.
Faizel, let's start at the beginning. We opened the show up tonight, and of course last week as well. We followed you guys around for the World Literacy Day. I know that you've been instrumental in putting this project on the table. You've been instrumental in building the relationship with United Way as well. Last year it all started dishing out 1,000 food parcels, and now you've brought United Way back.
Yeah, no, definitely, JP. Again, I'd like to thank United Ways and Pay It Forward and that. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the women's collective that's driving it. And, it's good to have the ladies on board and, assisting and helping within the communities and that there. And I think from our side, my role is merely, supportive and that there. And I think, the key is having these ladies on board and getting out there into the schools and that there. So I think from the women's collective coming up with the idea and getting in terms of helping and assisting in the communities, I think that's the type of initiatives that, Western Province would like to be a part of. And, with partners like United Ways, that just makes it easier.
Faizel, give us a little bit more information of last week. I mean, last week you went to the schools. We've got some footage of you guys packing books, and clearly you had to do a bit of work there, separating books between the high schools and primary schools. But tell us a little bit more about that initiative, even though we've all seen the footage. You chose some schools which you must, of course, have a relationship with already.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the initiative comes again, from the Women's Collective, who have identified areas and schools in the areas that need assistance and help. And I think, from rugby, Western Province Rugby, the idea is basically the involvement in the community. And I think, what we want to do is uplift the community, whether it's sport, whether it's education, whether it's just being involved and active in that. And I think it's a great initiative, again, coming from the collective, and it's about creating that access point. And I think the key thing is having, the ladies on board, but at the same time, the ladies driving and, the interest in the kids and getting the youngsters involved in that. And I think ultimately, listening to the women's collective, the key and the focus is, again, upliftment of the community and getting our kids active and involved and, having access, to those, facilities and communities through the women's collective and that.
We've seen quite a lot of success already from some of the clubs that have adopted the concept of having a club rugby women's representative. We look at Eersterivier, who's had a tremendous amount of success. False Bay Rugby Club, we mentioned it, starting off with 5 players, now more than 55. Well, that was 2 weeks ago, probably now more than 60. But clearly the process over the last year, at least, the escalation of awareness for women's rugby, the escalation of activity for women's rugby, it's starting to bear fruit now, Faizel.
No, definitely, JP, and I think I want to commend the clubs in terms of, latching onto the initiative, and especially the ladies that have taken and put their hands up. And I think, it's good to, I always say we're very fortunate, in the sense that we have our clubs, we have our support structures, and we have our members within the community that's always willing to help and assist. And I think coming up with the initiative and the buy-in, in terms of, the objective and goals in terms of what we want to achieve and what we want to do. And I think, from rugby and, Western Province, the responsibility is there for our communities and that there. And I think, just the mere fact of these ladies putting their hands up and the champions that are driving it and the passion that's there, I think, we definitely have something here in terms of getting out into the communities and, come up with these initiatives, like I said, not generally looking at specifically at rugby, but it's sport in general, focusing on education, focusing in terms of, that interaction and involvement in terms of how we can help and assist, having partners like United Way has paid forward that have come on board to try and assist and help us in terms of achieving these goals within these communities.
This coming Friday at City Park, you've got a YTC Festival. This is also dedicated specifically to women. Just tell us a little bit more about YTC and the festival itself.
Yeah, so the YTC is obviously the youth training center, and I think the great work that they're doing in terms of uplifting and promoting sport within the schools. I think that is key. I think from the book drive that we had, we were out at one of the schools. It's a school that we might not necessarily have gone to, but I think it was great to see the excitement and the joy in terms of the learners realizing the opportunity to actually access the sport. And I think through the YTC, those are the channels that we will use in terms of promoting, getting the sport, getting it out there. And it's just more about, the schools coming together and basically the festival in terms of playing and the interaction and engagement with the learners in that. And I think, from rugby and the YTC, they're doing great, tremendous work in providing that after-school, facility and opportunity for the learners to, engage in sport. So the age groups, looking at primary school, moving up to high schools, where, we have a central venue where we come together, we train, and from there, basically also look at identifying players who have, were given the opportunity to take the next step. So it's all about identifying talent where we might not necessarily have found or, found that talent.
Faizel, the other element that I suppose that a lot of people are talking about is the fact that we are finally seeing some rugby activity again, even though limited, even though in very small pockets. But some of the clubs have chosen to play some friendlies. That must be refreshing for you guys to be talking about things like fixtures and where to play and have you got referees and so on.
No, definitely. I think it's fantastic. As you said earlier on, it's baby steps. I think it's just more about people having confidence to come out, to get out there and to start playing. The clubs that have they've basically taken up, the opportunity now to get out there, to get out in the field. And, I think in time to come, you'll find a lot more clubs latching on. I know there's been sort of, some of the clubs, looking at 15s. There might not necessarily have been interest, but when it comes to sevens, tag rugby, I think that's what about it. It's again creating opportunities. And I think, from sport, we want to get out there, we want to start playing, we want to get our spectators, our people back out in the field. This is just the starting point. And I think, again, it's just the mere fact of being out in the field on a Saturday and hopefully, get back that normality and, get the clubs operational again.
Just on a final note, Faizel, and maybe I know maybe you're not prepared for this question, but last week we saw the Minister of Sport, the President of SA Rugby, Mark Alexander, go on a live stream. We also saw former Springbok captain John Smith and current Springbok captain Siya Kolisi talk about the fact that people should get vaccinated. And that there's a big drive for that. We also saw President Cyril Ramaphosa come out on Sunday night encouraging people to get vaccinated. Is that also in the line of thinking of from a Western Province point of view? Are you guys also asking people to seriously consider getting vaccinated?
Look, I think a lot of people have choice in terms of whether they take the vaccination or not. And I think from sport and in general, if we want to get back into the stadiums and we want to get back out onto the fields, there's certain requirements in terms of what government regulation requires and what's needed. And I think it's definitely something that we would encourage if it means us getting out on the field and if it means that we can fast track the process in terms of when we come out, when we get out on the field. I think currently at the moment, there is a bit of a dire need to get our spectators back into the stadiums and out there. And if it means that we need to be vaccinated in order to get out there, then I think it's definitely something that we definitely encourage, our supporters, our players and everybody. I think, the clubs, we're struggling. I know a lot of the guys come weekends, they lost, they don't know what to do. And, if our side, I think we are looking at in terms of how do we encourage or how do we, get out onto the field. And we are looking at, doing the research in terms of what is needed to get our clubs back and what our players back out on the field.
Yep, Faizel. In the meantime, well done on all the activities. The women's growth plan is certainly starting to bear fruit. Great to see some of the clubs. We saw Busy Bees and Laguna playing a derby match over the weekend. There's a few matches taking place this weekend. Of course, as we know, and you might want to emphasize that no matches are allowed to happen without your strict approval and, of course, strict COVID guidelines.
Yeah. No, I think JP, again, anybody wanting to play, any club that's playing an app, there's certain, boxes that we need to tick. And I think, again, everything you've done according to regulation doesn't stop us from, playing and enjoying the sport and enjoying, the game that we love. But again, it's a reminder, as you said, to the people out there and the clubs, we need to ensure that strict protocols are in place. The fans are not yet back. So, baby steps, we will get there. We just need to obviously reach the hurdle now of basically having confidence in terms of playing fixtures, making sure fixtures are being played, and then the next step is basically hopefully bringing spectators, bringing our fans back, and having tournaments as well. So yeah, looking forward to it.
I think the whole world is waiting for that. But yes, Faizel, we'll leave it at that. We'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, thanks, JP.
There we go, folks. Faizel Felton, Western Province Club Rugby, and there remains these difficult times and difficult challenges ahead, but Western Province Rugby is certainly driving the initiative in the background to keep the membership active, to grow the various parts of club rugby, and we'll keep following the progress, and we'll keep bringing you the latest information of what's happening in club rugby. And of course, we'll remind all of you to stay safe out there. Remember, follow all the health and safety protocols. And we'll say to you then, we'll see you again next week, same time, same place. Have a fantastic rugby weekend. Bye-bye.